Hello, this is a street in Bergfield Common, and between the years of 1938 and 1974, where I'm standing now would have been a racetrack. The quarter-mile long circuit was built in the grounds of the Auclum country estate, which was owned by Neil Gardiner, a director of a company known as Huntley and Palmer's, a large biscuit manufacturer based in Reading. And the circuit started out as the driveway leading up to the main house from its gated entrance on Man's Hill. In 1938, Gardiner thought it would be a jolly idea to tarmac his driveway to make a racetrack, and for added fun, he insisted that the corners on the driveway be banked, a bit like Brooklands race circuit, but on a much smaller scale. The result was the Great Auclum Speed Hill Climb Circuit, a quarter-mile long race circuit with 5 banked corners, all built by guesswork, making for quite the challenging race. It was not uncommon for cars to fall off the circuit during cornering. Today we're going to explore the remains of this hidden and forgotten racetrack, and where better to start than the race circuit's start line. You'll find this quite easily by following the old driveway and track which leads off Man's Hill. Interestingly, despite it being a hill climb circuit, once you leave the start line for a short distance you'll actually be heading downhill, and by the time you finish your lap or run you'll end up at pretty much the same height as when you started. The first event was held in 1938, organised by the Sporting Owners Drivers Club, and at the time it was a less well organised affair, being described as a speed hill climb up the private drive of Neil Gardiner's house. There aren't any records to tell us who set the best lap times. In fact, there aren't any records at all, it would seem. It wouldn't be until 1939 that someone thought to start making a note of things. Turn number 1 is a fairly sharp right-hand turn which starts to take you uphill before you reach the more technical part of the track. Originally, the corner featured a 4-foot high banking, but this was deemed unsafe and in later years extended to 7 foot. In 1939, a driver known as P.W. Neal no doubt hammered it through here as fast as possible to set the first official lap record of 27 seconds, and it turns out that because the bank corners were built by guesswork, it was faster to not use the banking. The lap record would stand for 8 years because in 1939 it was decided to take a break from race events to focus on something more important. It wouldn't be until 1947 that racing resumed and a new lap record of 23.5 seconds was set, only to be beaten the following year by Ken Wharton, no doubt annoying Sterling Moss, who came in second position, losing out by 1/10 of a second. Once you've got turn 1 out of the way, you enter a series of 4 corners that twist and turn their way through the trees and hillside, each getting tighter and more challenging as you ascend. There's very little margin for error here. If you get it wrong, you're most likely going to end up wrapped around a tree, which is less desirable. But despite the track's dangerous nature, what with being designed by a garden landscaper, race events occurred annually. The circuit would reach its height of popularity in 1959 when it became part of the National Hill Climb series of races organised by the RAC. Whilst it was the shortest circuit in the championship, it's said to have been a favourite due to its dangerous nature and track design, or lack thereof. A good example would be the massive greenhouse that was located on the outside of the final corner. If you hit the corner too fast, you're going through it in a car that is completely open-topped. So, yeah. It's surprising that racing was allowed to happen at all, really, but it was simpler times back then. The last event was held in 1974, won by Roy Lane, who just missed out on setting the fastest lap record of all time, which had been set the year before by Chris Kramer with a time of 17.65 seconds, which of course still stands today following the circuit's closure. The final corner is a near right angle, and once negotiated you'll be on the finish line straight, which brings us back to a street in Bergfield Common. It's not exactly clear as to why the race circuit closed, but I imagine it was down to housing and redevelopment. Where today we find a collection of beautiful homes was once a field used by the race circuit as a paddock area, but as you've seen, the main highlight being the race circuit itself seems to have escaped the property developers, and it now sits alongside newer developments hiding away to eventually be forgotten forever. Thanks for watching.